If you're checking your blood pressure first thing in the morning and seeing numbers that make your heart sink, I need you to stop blaming yourself right now. A groundbreaking study in the Journal of the American College of Cardiology revealed something that changes how we should think about morning blood pressure. For decades, doctors told patients, take your medication, reduce your salt, and your blood pressure will behave. But this research, involving over 52,000 participants, showed that morning blood pressure spikes are happening to millions of seniors doing everything right. The study found that uncontrolled morning blood pressure increases stroke risk by 64% compared to people whose pressure stays stable throughout the day. 64%. That's your life we're talking about. I'm Dr. Evelyn Moore, and I've been practicing internal medicine for over 28 years. I've had thousands of conversations with patients confused and frustrated because their blood pressure seems to have a mind of its own every morning. And for years, even I was giving advice that I now realize was incomplete. Today, I'm going to share exactly what's happening inside your body during those early morning hours, why standard advice isn't working, and what you can actually do about it. But before I reveal the specific protocol that has helped my patients finally get their morning blood pressure under control, you need to understand why your body is working against you in the first place. And to do that, I need to tell you about a patient of mine named Harold. Harold was 73 years old when he first came to see me. A retired engineer, he approached everything with precision and logic. He had spreadsheets tracking his blood pressure going back 5 years. He took his medication at exactly 7:30 every morning. He walked 3 miles every day, rain or shine. His wife Barbara had transformed their diet. No processed foods, minimal salt, plenty of vegetables. By every measure, Harold was doing everything right. But here's what haunted him. Every morning, without fail, his blood pressure read between 160 and 170 over 95, sometimes higher. He'd stare at those numbers and feel like a failure. By noon, his pressure was down to 130 over 82. By evening, 124 over 78. Perfect numbers. Dr. Moore, he said, his voice heavy with frustration, I'm doing everything you doctors tell me to do. Everything. So why does my blood pressure hate mornings as much as I do? He told me he woke at 6, went to the bathroom, then immediately checked his blood pressure. The anxiety of what he might see made it hard to sleep some nights. The worst part, Barbara said, holding his hand, is that I found him crying in the bathroom last month. He thought I was asleep. He said he felt like a ticking time bomb. I looked at Harold's charts. His afternoon and evening readings were excellent. His medication was working. But something was happening between 4 and 8 in the morning that was undermining everything he did right. What I told Harold next changed everything for him, and it's going to change everything for you too. But first, I need to explain what's actually happening inside your body during those early morning hours. Because once you understand this, everything else is going to make so much more sense. Now, before I continue, I want to hear from you. If you've ever felt that same frustration Harold felt, that sense that your blood pressure just won't cooperate in the morning no matter what you do, drop a comment below. Tell me what time of day you typically check your pressure and what numbers you're seeing. I read every single comment, and your experience might help someone else watching this video feel less alone. Here's what you need to understand. Your body is not a machine that operates the same way at all hours. It's a sophisticated system that follows specific patterns, including your circadian rhythm. You've probably heard that term in connection with sleep, but your circadian rhythm controls far more than when you feel tired. Your blood pressure naturally follows a 24-hour cycle. During sleep, your blood pressure drops. This is called nocturnal dipping, and it's healthy and normal. Your body is in rest and repair mode. In healthy individuals, blood pressure drops about 10 to 20% during sleep. Here's where it gets interesting. In the early morning hours, usually around 4 or 5 a.m., your body begins preparing for wakefulness. It's like your internal alarm clock starts going off 2 hours before you actually wake up. During this time, several things happen. First, your body releases a surge of hormones, particularly cortisol and adrenaline. Think of cortisol as your body's natural caffeine. It helps you wake up alert. But cortisol also causes blood vessels to constrict, raising your blood pressure. Second, your sympathetic nervous system, your fight-or-flight system, becomes more active. In the morning, it's ramping up to help you transition from sleep to wakefulness. But increased sympathetic activity means increased heart rate and blood pressure. Third, and this is crucial, your blood becomes stickier in the morning. Certain clotting factors are naturally higher when you wake up. This was probably an evolutionary adaptation. But in modern times, this stickier blood combined with higher blood pressure creates a perfect storm for cardiovascular events. This is why more heart attacks and strokes happen between 6 and noon than at any other time of day. The majority of cardiovascular events occur in the morning hours. This isn't coincidence, it's biology. Now, here's where it gets even more complicated for seniors specifically. As we age, several things change that make this morning surge even more pronounced. First, our blood vessels become stiffer. Imagine a garden hose that's been left out in the sun for years. It loses its flexibility. It doesn't expand and contract as easily. Your arteries do the same thing as you get older. When you're young, your arteries can absorb some of the pressure from each heartbeat. They stretch a little, then bounce back. But when arteries are stiff, they can't do this as well, so the pressure stays higher. Second, the natural nocturnal dipping I mentioned earlier becomes less pronounced as we age. Some seniors experience what's called non-dipping or even reverse dipping, where their blood pressure actually rises during sleep. When your starting point is already elevated, that morning surge pushes you into dangerous territory. Third, many seniors have what we call isolated systolic hypertension. That's when the top number is high, but the bottom number is normal or even low. This pattern is extremely common after age 65 and is largely due to arterial stiffness. The morning surge hits the systolic number especially hard. Fourth, and this is something that doesn't get talked about enough, many common blood pressure medications wear off at exactly the wrong time. If you take your pill in the morning, by the time the next morning rolls around, you're at the lowest level of medication coverage exactly when your body is naturally pushing your pressure the highest. It's like your medication and your biology are working on opposite schedules. Let me give you an analogy. Imagine you're trying to keep a room at a constant temperature. Your medication is like a heating system that gradually loses power over 24 hours. Your morning blood pressure surge is like someone opening all the windows and doors every day at dawn and letting cold air rush in. By the time the cold air is at its worst, your heating system is at its weakest. The room gets cold. In your body, that room getting cold is your blood pressure spiking. Now, you might be thinking, okay, Dr. Moore, this is all very interesting, but what about my medication? Isn't that supposed to control my blood pressure all day long? And this is where we get to what that study I mentioned at the beginning actually revealed. Because researchers found something that challenged what many doctors assumed was true. The study, published in the Journal of the American College of Cardiology, followed participants for an average of 5 years. They used a technique called ambulatory blood pressure monitoring, where participants wore a device that measured their blood pressure automatically throughout the day and night. This is very different from the occasional readings you get at a doctor's office, or even the readings you take at home at random times. What the researchers discovered was that morning blood pressure surge, which they defined as the difference between the average blood pressure during the 2 hours after waking and the lowest blood pressure during sleep, was an independent predictor of cardiovascular events. That means even when they controlled for other factors like age, overall blood pressure levels, and medication use, the morning surge itself was dangerous. But here's the part that really matters for you. They found that certain patients were experiencing morning surges of 40, 50, even 60 millimeters of mercury or more. And many of these patients had what appeared to be well-controlled blood pressure when measured at other times of day. Their doctors thought they were doing fine. Their home readings looked good. But during those critical morning hours, they were essentially unprotected. The study also found that the degree of morning surge correlated with damage to target organs. Patients with higher morning surges had more evidence of heart enlargement, more kidney damage, and more changes in their blood vessels than patients with lower morning surges, even when their average daily blood pressure was similar. This is revolutionary because it means we can't just look at a single blood pressure reading and assume everything is fine. We have to understand what's happening during that vulnerable morning window. Now let me tell you about what happened when I applied this knowledge to Harold's case. I had Harold get an ambulatory blood pressure monitor. For 24 hours, it recorded his pressure every 20 to 30 minutes during the day and every 30 to 60 minutes during the night. When I got the results, I finally understood what was happening. Harold's blood pressure was dipping normally at night, going down to about 105/65 while he slept. Good. But then, starting around 4:30 in the morning, it began climbing rapidly. By the time he woke at 6, it was already at 150/90. And the act of getting out of bed, walking to the bathroom, and the anxiety of checking his pressure pushed it even higher to those scary 160 to 170 readings he was seeing. His morning surge was over 50 millimeters of mercury. That's massive. And his once daily blood pressure medication, which he took at 7:30 in the morning, wasn't reaching peak effectiveness until around 11 a.m., exactly when his blood pressure had already started coming down naturally on its own. "Harold," I said, "your medication isn't failing. Your timing is off. Your body needs protection at 4 in the morning, not at 11. We made several changes to Harold's routine, and within 6 weeks, his morning readings were consistently under 140/85. More importantly, his average morning surge dropped from over 50 to under 20 millimeters of mercury. Barbara told me he started sleeping through the night again. The anxiety about morning readings faded because the readings weren't scary anymore. I'm going to share exactly what changes we made in just a moment. But first, let me tell you about 2 other patients whose situations were different from Harold's, but equally improved once we addressed their morning blood pressure correctly. The first is a woman I'll call Dorothy. She was 68 years old and had been diagnosed with high blood pressure about 4 years before she came to see me. Unlike Harold, Dorothy was not someone who tracked her readings religiously. In fact, she admitted she often forgot to check for weeks at a time. She came to me because she'd been experiencing headaches in the morning, and her optometrist had noticed some changes in the blood vessels of her eyes that concerned him. When we started monitoring Dorothy's blood pressure more carefully, we found something interesting. Her afternoon and evening readings were actually quite good, usually around 125/78. She was taking her medication with breakfast around 8 a.m., but when she checked first thing in the morning before medication, she was seeing numbers around 155/92. She hadn't been concerned because she figured the medication would bring it down, and it did. But what she didn't realize was that those 2 to 3 hours of elevated pressure every single morning were causing cumulative damage. "Think of it like this," I told her. "Imagine a river that floods every morning for 3 hours, then goes back to normal. Over time, those daily floods erode the riverbanks. That's what's happening to your blood vessels every morning." Dorothy's headaches, it turned out, were directly related to these morning pressure spikes. The blood vessels in her head were being stressed every day at dawn. Her optometrist was seeing evidence of this stress in the blood vessels of her eyes, which are basically a window into what's happening to blood vessels everywhere in her body. For Dorothy, we focused on timing her medication differently and adding some specific morning routines that helped blunt the surge. Within 2 months, her morning readings were down to 135/83. Her headaches had disappeared, and when she went back to the optometrist, he noted improvement in those concerning blood vessel changes. The second case I want to tell you about is a gentleman named Walter. Walter was 81 and had been managing his blood pressure for over 20 years. He considered himself an expert patient. But Walter had a problem that many seniors share. He was waking up multiple times during the night to use the bathroom. This is extremely common, especially in men with prostate issues, but also in many women. What Walter didn't realize was that each time he got up during the night, his blood pressure was spiking. The transition from lying down to standing, especially in the middle of the night when his body wasn't expecting to be active, was causing significant surges. And then, because he was anxious about falling in the dark bathroom, his stress response was adding to the spike. We worked on several strategies for Walter, including adjusting when he drank fluids, positioning changes for getting out of bed, and yes, some medication adjustments. His nighttime awakenings didn't stop completely, but the blood pressure spikes associated with them dropped dramatically. His morning reading, which had been averaging around 158/91, came down to 132/79. "I feel like I've been fighting with my body for 20 years, Walter told me at his follow-up appointment, and now we finally called a truce. Now I want to pause here and ask you another question. If you've been dealing with high morning blood pressure, have you ever had your doctor discuss the timing of your medication with you? Not just what medication you're taking, but specifically when you take it and whether that timing makes sense for your individual pattern? Comment below and let me know, because I suspect many of you have never had this conversation, and that needs to change. All right, let's talk about what you can actually do. I'm going to walk you through a protocol that incorporates everything we know from the latest research about managing morning blood pressure. This isn't about replacing your doctor's advice. You should absolutely discuss these strategies with your healthcare provider, but this will give you the information you need to have a productive conversation and advocate for yourself. The first thing you need to do is understand your own pattern. You can't fix a problem you can't see. I recommend taking your blood pressure at least 4 times a day for 1 week, immediately upon waking, before any activity, around mid-morning, in the early evening, and right before bed. Write down not just the numbers, but the time and any relevant notes. Did you just climb stairs? Were you feeling stressed? Did you just drink coffee? This diary will reveal your personal pattern. Some of you will discover, like Harold, that your morning surge is dramatic, but your daytime readings are fine. Others might find that your pressure is elevated throughout the day. Still others might notice that certain activities or stressors trigger spikes at various times. Each pattern suggests a different approach. The second step is to discuss medication timing with your doctor. Research has shown that taking blood pressure medication at night, rather than in the morning, can significantly reduce morning blood pressure surge in many patients. One large study called the Hygia chronotherapy trial found that taking blood pressure medication at bedtime rather than morning reduced cardiovascular events by 45%. Now, this doesn't mean everyone should switch to nighttime dosing. Some medications can cause issues if taken at night, and some people experience dizziness or falls if their blood pressure drops too low while they're sleeping and then get up to use the bathroom. But this is absolutely a conversation worth having with your doctor. Another option is split dosing, where you take part of your medication in the morning and part at night. Some patients also benefit from adding a second medication at a different time, rather than increasing the dose of their single medication. The goal is to have medication coverage that matches your body's natural rhythm. Third, and this is something many people overlook, you need to be intentional about how you wake up. Abrupt awakenings cause bigger blood pressure spikes than gradual ones. If you're using a jarring alarm that jolts you out of deep sleep, that sudden stress response is adding to your morning surge. Consider using a sunrise simulator alarm clock that gradually increases light in your room, mimicking a natural dawn, or use an alarm with a gentle, gradually increasing sound rather than a sudden loud noise. When you do wake up, don't immediately jump out of bed. Lie still for a few minutes. Take some slow, deep breaths. Let your body transition gradually from sleep to wakefulness. Then, sit up on the edge of the bed for another minute or two before standing. This graduated awakening gives your cardiovascular system time to adjust. Fourth, watch what you do in the first hour after waking. Cold exposure, like splashing cold water on your face or stepping outside in cold weather, can cause blood vessel constriction and pressure spikes. Some people find that their morning shower routine, especially if they end with cold water, raises their pressure. Consider using lukewarm water instead, at least for the first hour or two of your day. The same goes for drinking coffee or other caffeine on an empty stomach first thing in the morning. Caffeine causes blood vessel constriction. If you're combining that with your body's natural morning surge, you're adding fuel to the fire. Try eating something small before your coffee, or consider delaying your first cup by an hour or so until your morning surge has started to settle. Fifth, manage the stress of checking your blood pressure. I know this sounds circular, but for many patients, the anxiety about what the reading will show actually raises the reading itself. This is called white coat effect, and it can happen even when you're alone at home. Here's what I recommend. Before you take your reading, sit quietly for at least 5 minutes. Put your feet flat on the floor, rest your arm on a flat surface at heart level, and take several slow, deep breaths. Think of something pleasant or do a brief mental relaxation exercise. Then take your reading. If it's high, don't immediately check again and again. That anxiety spiral will only make things worse. Wait at least 15 minutes before rechecking. Also consider whether first thing in the morning is even the best time for you to check. If the morning reading is causing you significant anxiety, and if you've already established that your pattern involves morning surges, it might be more useful to check at other times of day when you can get a clearer picture of how your medication is working. Discuss this with your doctor. Sixth, consider your sleep quality. Poor sleep, sleep apnea, and disrupted sleep all contribute to higher morning blood pressure. If you snore loudly, wake up frequently, feel unrested despite adequate sleep time, or have been told you stop breathing during sleep, please talk to your doctor about a sleep study. Sleep apnea is incredibly common in seniors and has a direct, significant impact on blood pressure. Treating sleep apnea often improves blood pressure control dramatically. Seventh, stay physically active, but time your exercise thoughtfully. Regular physical activity is one of the best things you can do for your blood pressure overall. However, very intense exercise immediately upon waking can sometimes exacerbate morning blood pressure issues. If you're a morning exerciser, consider doing lighter activity like stretching or walking in the first hour after waking, and saving more vigorous exercise for a bit later. Eighth, pay attention to your evening routine. What you do the night before affects your morning. A heavy, salty meal late at night can contribute to elevated morning pressure. Alcohol, even in moderate amounts, can disrupt sleep quality and affect blood pressure the next morning. Try to have your last meal of the day at least 3 hours before bed, keep it relatively light and low in sodium, and limit evening alcohol. Now, I want to be very clear about something. Everything I've just shared is meant to help you have better conversations with your healthcare provider and to give you tools you can use alongside, not instead of, professional medical care. High blood pressure, especially when it's not well controlled, can have serious consequences. If your morning readings are consistently elevated, you need to work with your doctor to address this. Please don't try to manage this entirely on your own. There are also warning signs that mean you should seek medical attention urgently. If your morning blood pressure reading is over 180 over 120, especially if you're experiencing symptoms like severe headache, chest pain, shortness of breath, visual changes, or confusion, this is a hypertensive crisis, and you should seek emergency care immediately. Similarly, if you're experiencing new symptoms that concern you, don't wait. Trust your instincts and get checked out. Let me tell you what happened to Harold, Dorothy, and Walter after we implemented these changes. Harold became fascinated by circadian blood pressure patterns. He started tracking his readings against sleep quality, morning routine, and even weather. He discovered his pressure was consistently higher on cold mornings, so we adjusted his heating for warmer wake-ups. At his last visit, he showed me 6 months of morning readings, all under 140 over 85. More importantly, he stopped feeling like a failure. He understood his morning surge wasn't his fault, and he had tools to manage it. Dorothy became an advocate for checking blood pressure at multiple times daily. She convinced 3 friends to track their morning readings, and 2 discovered the same issue. One had been told her pressure was well controlled, based on office readings, but morning readings told a different story. And Walter sent me a letter saying that for the first time in decades, he wasn't afraid of his blood pressure. He finally had control over something that had controlled him for 20 years. His wife noticed too. He was more relaxed, sleeping better, and even gardening again. These stories matter because they show that morning blood pressure isn't a mystery you're powerless against. With understanding and the right strategies, real change is possible. So let me summarize what we've covered. Your blood pressure naturally surges in the morning due to hormonal changes, increased sympathetic nervous system activity, and changes in blood clotting tendency. This is normal biology, but in seniors, this surge can be exaggerated and dangerous. Research shows morning blood pressure surge is an independent risk factor for heart attack and stroke, separate from your average blood pressure level. Many patients who appear well controlled are actually experiencing dangerous morning spikes. The good news is there are concrete steps you can take. Track your blood pressure at multiple times to understand your pattern. Talk to your doctor about medication timing. Wake up gradually. Be mindful of cold exposure and caffeine in early morning hours. Manage the stress of checking your pressure. Address sleep quality issues. Stay active, but time exercise appropriately. And pay attention to your evening routine. Remember, this isn't about doing everything perfectly. It's about understanding your body and making informed choices for your situation. Small changes can add up to big improvements. If you found this helpful, please hit that subscribe button so you don't miss our upcoming videos. Next week, I'm talking about the surprising connection between blood pressure and memory. You won't want to miss that. Please share this video with someone you love who's dealing with blood pressure issues. You might be giving them information that changes their life. And remember, your morning doesn't have to be a source of dread. With the right knowledge and approach, you can greet each new day knowing your blood pressure is under control. I'm Dr. Evelyn Moore, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care of yourself and take care of your heart. And as always, please remember that everything I share in these videos is for educational purposes only. It's not a substitute for professional medical advice. Always talk to your doctor before making any changes to your health routine or medication.